Welcome to Kicking It Local, the podcast all about the football community in South Australia. I'm your host, Johnny Kecko, and this week I am joining up with the president of Fulham United in the State League 1 and also the WNPL, Arthur Labrosciano. Mate, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Today's episode is going to be a great one. You're involved in a club that not only has a State League 1 team, but also a WNPL team and also 450 registered players within the your club as well.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
That's a whole lot of work for a president.
Well, I've got some good help, to be honest. My committee's got some great people on there, and it makes it doable. We've got some very, very good people that have been at the club for a long time, and are really conscientious and do a great job.
So you've been at the club. The club's been around for 52 years.
Yes.
How much of that has been how many of those years have you been at that club for?
Well, the club actually came out of West Beach Soccer Club, which was an amateur club in those days.
Yep.
And they formed their own club in 1970, and they decided to call it Western United because it was on the western side of town. And we played at Barrett Reserve, which ironically is where our first teams play now at West Beach Parks.
Okay.
The stadium there. So we actually started 150 metres closer to the beach to where we are now.
Yeah. So more so where the baseball is now.
Yeah, we're pretty well where the baseball is now.
Yeah.
If you can imagine just a tin shed, a green tin shed with one shower.
Yeah.
It's incredible. You know, we're now playing out of a $3 million complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's must do wonders for you guys to have that quality of the pitch as well there.
Yeah, look, you know, our juniors are housed at Collins Reserve, which is on Valletta Road there at Kidman Park. And it's a great venue, you know, four good change rooms, 2 which are dedicated to our women.
Yep.
And it is really a venue where we're able to house the number of juniors that we have. You got,
what's it like dealing with having your seniors men's playing at West Beach, your women's playing at a different venue, and then your junior playing another venue as well? Yeah, look, it has its challenges, no doubt. But what happened was 3 or 4 years ago, the Federation decided to play all the WNPL games either at West Beach, where we are, or at Velo, which is now Apex, of course. Yes.
And what that meant was that it lifted the standard of the women's game because all the games were played at good venues with good grounds, and it eliminated some of the grounds that were around that really weren't up to standard. And so that's been a very, very good thing, and that's still happening today. So they sort of took control of that, so it wasn't an issue for us with the women. With our men, when the Federation heard or knew that they got a grant from the then Labor government, this is going back about 5 years ago now, it was announced that when their venue, which has just been opened up at Jeps Cross, when that was opened and they moved up there, it would then mean that they would move out of West Beach and Fulham would take that over. They'd move out of Velo and Olympic would take it over. So Olympic has taken it over, and we're in the process of moving forward with that now, and we're hoping to take it over for next season. That's amazing to have that venue. We've seen how great it's been for Olympic to now finally call it home. They've made a couple of changes, not too much, but it does feel. You're starting to get that feel of like an Olympic home. Yeah, absolutely. And how important would that be to you guys to have that now? It's very important because whilst we've been playing there with our senior men, this is our 5th year. You know, you can't really make any changes to make it more like a home because of the arrangement that the Federation has with the West Beach Trust. It's not council land there. Now, for yourself, I want to talk more about the club a little bit later on with your president time. But to get to becoming president at Fulham United, you've had a lot of experience in football, not just only at Fulham United, but also another team. But before you moved to Adelaide City, you played at Adelaide at Fulham United. From 19 years old? Yeah, I started as a 19-year-old and played for 1 season. And then I did play 1 season at Adelaide Uni when I went to university. And that was 1 year, and then they lured me back to Fulham, and that was a life sentence. You know, so I went back to Fulham as a player, and when I was in my early 20s, or close to mid-20s, I became captain of the senior side. I captained them for 8 years, Played about 13 years in all for that senior team. In those days, being an amateur side, some of us that were really serious about the club, we also were on the committee.
Yep.
Things were very different, of course, to what they are today.
Yeah. What were some of the differences back then to what they are today?
Yeah, well, basically the club ran as 2 teams,
Yep.
first team and reserves. The needs of the club were not huge as far as dollars that were required. I have always been on the sponsorship side of the club since my playing days, and that hasn't changed. I take responsibility for that.
What's the reason behind that? Do you do that outside of football as well? Deal with clients and stuff like that? Or
no, look, I think the fact that I've been there the number of years that I have at the club, you build up a knowledge of people that are involved with the club over the years, and that's proven quite useful in attracting some good sponsors. Yeah.
You also in your playing days, you represented the club in the state amateur league team as well.
Twice. Yes. Yeah, a couple of times. One of the trips was to New South Wales, where they held a state championship. All the states met there. That was always a bit of a highlight.
Yeah.
You got to know a little bit better some of the players that you played against for years from other teams, Parafield Guards and Salisbury Inter, these clubs that are still around today.
Yeah.
And that made it enjoyable. Of course, going away for a week was fantastic.
What were those experiences like for players, especially in the amateur leagues, to have that competition to go away and play against some other teams across the country?
Yeah, no, look, in the very, very early days, they used to still select an amateur side, state amateur side, but they might go and play against Croatia in Whyalla or something like that. But then it became a lot more professional even there, where every state would select a state team, and they would go around Australia as to where they would have the state championships.
Yeah.
So that became quite, something worth doing and aiming for.
We don't really have much of that anymore, do we?
No.
Would it be good to bring stuff like that back for players?
You lose a lot of that ambition that players have. I mean, look, players want to play at the highest level they can, and if you represent your state, whether it's at an amateur level, professional level, whether it's marbles, soccer, football, tennis, whatever, it's always something that you cherish.
Do you reckon there could be room for a competition like, saying like a State League 1 All-Stars team versus State League 2 versus NPL?
Look,
versus an amateur one as well.
Yeah, look, anything is possible if it's organised well.
Yeah.
It does give the players a buzz, when they represent their state. It really doesn't matter in what format you have it. If you're representing your state, I mean, I've never been fortunate enough to have an Australian shirt on, but I can imagine what a buzz that would be, regardless of what level of the sport you might be competing at.
That'd be cool, like a League of Origin kind of thing, like a state of origin.
Whatever. I mean, all it really requires is a bit of thought and putting it
just
together.
adds a little bit of an enticement for players to play hard and try and make that team.
Absolutely.
You also you coached the club as well for a bit.
Yes, I coached them it seems to go in eights for me, but I coached them for 8 years, but not in a straight line. I'd coach them for 2 years, bearing in mind that some of those years that I coached them, I was still playing. Okay, so sometimes the club asked me to coach, so I would coach them. But 2 years seemed to be my threshold. I can put it that way. It was a pretty hard, it was a hard gig to coach and play as well.
Yes.
But even in my last 2 years, which obviously I wasn't playing at that time, I was a lot older. 2 years, and you sort of, for me, it was enough. And you moved on.
What would you do after those 2 years? Take a step back completely?
Yeah, I was always in the committee, even when I coached when we were in the amateurs. So it wasn't that I left the club or anything. I just, 2 years and then just concentrate on being on the committee, sponsorship, that sort of stuff.
And then the club would be like, nah, you got to go back in coaching.
Well, sometimes, a couple of the times that I was called to do it was because it wasn't working out with the existing coach.
Yeah.
And
you're always the backup.
I was. That's right. I was the backup. That's a perfect summation of what I was.
You were just there, just in case. We know if we need him, he's there.
Yeah, that's it.
No, but then your love for the club, obviously, you can see how much you enjoy working at this club now.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, not unfortunately, but unfortunately for the club, you had a kid, the son, and he went and played for Adelaide City, which meant that you had to move over to another black and white team.
Yeah. So what happened was I was actually coaching Fulham
Yep.
when my youngest boy, Lawrence, was as an 8-year-old,
Yep.
went out and did some trials at Adelaide City. And even though he was 8 years of age, they still took him on. Back then, they had to be a little bit older than that.
Yeah.
But they got him. They took him. And, of course, I'd go and watch him play whenever I could. But because I was still coaching Fulham, the senior side, it made it a little bit difficult at times.
Yep.
But as soon as, the Adelaide City got to know that I was involved with Fulham, and I knew some of the people at Adelaide City already anyway,
Yep.
they always try and rope you into, can you do this for us? Can you get involved with this? And I used to help whenever I could.
Yep.
But then once I stopped coaching at Fulham, most years I was the team manager for my son's team.
Yep.
I helped out the coach a few of the seasons for him as well. And I enjoyed my time quite a lot there, bearing in mind that as an 8-year-old, I started following Adelaide City.
Yeah.
And I was actually a ball boy for Adelaide City at some of their games.
Oh, in the NSL back in those days?
Well, even before the NSL.
Yep.
Wow. So that's how far back I go with Adelaide City.
So even though you had the love for Fulham United as playing there as a young kid,
I always followed Adelaide City in the professional side of things.
So what was that for you to see your son going through those ranks?
Yeah, look, he did very well. They had a very, very talented team.
Yep.
And they virtually just kept winning everything as they went through the system.
Yep.
And they skipped a couple of years, actually, because that's the quality that was in that team. I don't think they played in the under-13s. They skipped the under-17s and went straight into the under-19s and kept winning the leagues.
Jeez.
So that I think that's what kept my son going, to be honest, because I don't know how passionate he was to the game, but it was that good and the winning things that they all kept together.
Yeah, and then they roped you into staying involved in the club. And
So what happened was I was the team manager for my son's reserve side at the time, and Damian Mori said, "Look, Arthur, would you mind helping me out for the last half of the season?" Because he'd lost his team manager, and I thought, okay, I got to be here anyway. I had to go to the game every Saturday. So I did that. And 9 years later, I was still there.
Yep, jeez.
Yeah,
What's involved in being a team manager?
Oh, look, to be honest, it was for me, it was a really easy ride.
Yeah.
Because apart from making sure that things like the team sheets and stuff in those days had to be completed correctly.
Which is actually a pretty important job. If you don't do it, you could lose points.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was all good.
Yeah.
But I guess the thing that kept me going there for that period, length of time, was the fact that we won, I think, about 5 premierships.
Yeah.
4 were in a row.
Yeah.
Okay, and a couple of cups along the way. So I guess you play football for a reason. You play football to win games. You play football to win leagues.
That period you were there as well. You were your assistant coach, weren't you? That period, or just a team manager?
No, just a team manager. Always just a team manager.
Always just a team manager.
Yeah.
Do you ever have an input in the game as well, just for your experience?
Well, I don't want to say too much about that because, in a sense, it surprised me the closeness that I built up with Damian Mori, and that's to this day.
Yeah.
Okay. Why that happened or didn't happen, it's not for me to say.
Yeah.
But we had an exceptionally good rapport. Yeah. And I think that's what kept me there for such a long time. Having coached myself in the amateur league, it was a learning curve for me to see how the next level up operated at a club which was winning things and has always won things. And I guess that's what I really enjoyed, the fact that I was on the bench during the game, in the change room, before and after the game. If it wasn't for that involvement, there would have been nothing there for me to keep me there.
Fair enough. And that period you were there as well, you were involved in a team that I've got a couple of guests that I had on my show previously that were part of that team, Ben Moore and also Jonathan Negus. They both spoke about that period, what it was like. And also, I think Mark Talbot played against your team as well.
Yes.
And he said, they all said how amazing that team was at that period.
Yeah.
What was it actually like to now looking back on it and seeing what you guys actually had back then at Adelaide City?
Yeah. Look, it was a period where the NSL got disbanded. Adelaide City got out, Marconi got out, all those big clubs got out because they had to. There wasn't much choice. And it was a period where, in a sense, clubs retained the more loyal people, if I can put it that way, because we didn't have the limelight that the NSL had when you go back into the National Premier League. But the real advantage of that was that the people that stayed were really passionate for the club. And for me, that period was one that, yes, we did have a very good side, but also the way they bonded. And when you win 4 in a row at that level, you almost get to a mindset where even when you're 1-0 down and there's 3 minutes to go, it's like you're going to score. It's hard to describe the positiveness that is around the club and in the change rooms by players, coaches, administrators. I mean, we had Damian Mori, who's a hard taskmaster, but if you want to win games, there's only one way, and you do have to work very hard.
What's he like? Because we've seen him now. He's at White City. They got promoted from State League 1, so they were playing against you guys last year in the State League 1.
Yes.
Now they're in the NPL and just fighting for top 4 position because they're doing very, very well. Almost knocked off Adelaide City, who are been undefeated for most of the season.
Yes. Yeah.
What was it like to experience him, and what's he actually like as a coach?
Yeah. Look, the thing that always amazed me with him was that, you're with someone for 9 years and you think, is he ever going to be 5 minutes late for a training session? Is he ever going to take a training session off rather because he might have a bit of a cold or, something's come up? No. He will be the first one there. He'll set it all up. And because of that dedication, it makes it, I think, a lot more difficult for players to stray. Like training started at 6 o'clock. It didn't start at 6:05. It started at 6 o'clock. And you'd see a player who was running a little bit late from work, because some of them struggled to get there because of work. They'd be running into the change room to get changed and get on the park. Because that's what had to happen. And I think that sort of mentality sometimes steals players to a level where they just a little bit more mental tough than the opposition. And I know that sounds a bit silly, but sometimes there's not much between the teams. And the difference can be between the years.
Absolutely. And is he a very hard coach? If someone is late, would he? He seems like he's a tough coach.
Yeah. Look, as I said, I can't label him as a soft coach because he's certainly not that. But there's hard and there's common sense hard. I think I found that if there was a player with some genuine issue, he would do a lot of work behind the scenes to rectify that or to help as much as he could. But friendship and football are two separate things. In the football and on the ground, this is what we do. And I think sometimes players need to understand that good coaches must be demanding. And he proved it many times with players he picked up from other clubs. The performance they gave us was substantially better than where they were playing.
Well, now look at him. I want to talk a little bit about Damian Mori as well, because you look at him now. He's coaching Beograd. But he also has a full-time job and also had to juggle a part-time interim gig at LA United as well. So not many coaches would do that. They would push aside their state league teams or NPL teams to take on that big role. But not Damian though. Is he that type of guy that just would happy to take on as much as possible?
Yeah, and because of his work ethics, really, that's the only thing you can put it down to. Most people, they think they've got a stressful job. That's more than enough, to be at 2 clubs and still have a full-time job. And he had a full-time job when he was at Adelaide City with Best Bricks. So, so that's the type of person he is. There's no rest in the man. He's always on the go.
What's the energy like around him? Because he seems like a type of coach that, like you said, he's hard. He sets his boundaries and stuff like that with the players. But what's the energy like around other people and yourself that feed off of him?
Well, look, to be quite frank, when he first came to the club, he's not the most open type of individual, and I hope he won't mind me saying this if he is. But if he feels comfortable with someone, I think over the years, obviously, he's improved even in that area. We all do. We all mature and become better at interacting with people. But in those early years, I guess it's fair to say that he was more focused on the things that he had to do and people that he felt comfortable with. And sometimes maybe he could have been a bit more generous with other people around the place.
Yeah. Well, whatever he's doing, he's being successful. So
absolutely. You can't argue with that.
Yep.
A record is a record.
That's it. Now, it's enough about Damian Mori because it's all about you today, because I want to talk about your time as well at Fulham, because we've got heaps to get through at Fulham United. Yep. But your time at Adelaide City was not short-lived, but you were there for a very big time, and you learnt a lot from the club.
Yeah.
How did it come about that you made your way back to Fulham?
Okay, so about 3 or 4 years before I left Adelaide City, and I left Adelaide City in 2013. Okay, Fulham was finally able to start having juniors. Okay, prior to that, we weren't allowed to have juniors.
What's the reason behind that?
Oh, well, the Federation just wouldn't let it happen, and we were in the amateur league, so we couldn't have juniors, and that's the reason why my youngest son went and played juniors.
Yep.
Indeed, even my oldest son played juniors at Adelaide City because we didn't have any at Fulham. So when we were able to have juniors, finally, it grew overnight.
Yep.
Like numbers just went through the roof very quickly. So I said to the then committee, I said, really now, it's time that, we think about putting the club in the Federation, right? Because when these children turn 16, they've got to go to another club.
That's it.
There's no room for them to grow at our club. So the then committee said, well, Arthur, we don't really disagree with that. Do you want to form like a subcommittee?
Yep.
I was still at Adelaide City, mind you. Form a subcommittee, look into all the requirements that are needed to make the transition from the amateur league to the Federation, costs, the whole thing. So we did this through 2013.
Yep.
Okay.
Once you noticed the work, did you regret bringing it up to the board?
Well, yes and no. At that stage, I thought it'd be a lot simpler. But anyway, so they asked me to do that. So I did that in 2013 with another 4 or 5 people.
Yep.
We came up with our recommendation. We presented it at the end of that season to the then committee, and they endorsed it.
Yep.
Okay. So they endorsed it. At the following AGM, I got voted in as president.
Yep. Oh, wow.
Okay?
Yep.
So from 2014 onwards, I've been president of the club. And I thought to myself at the time, I'll work for 2 or 3 years, get the club into the Federation. I've done my bit, right? Because that's the reason I went back. I opened my big mouth, so I got to see it through.
Yep.
Which was fine. That's what I wanted to do. So I left Adelaide City at the end of 13, started with Fulham as president at 14. In 2016, we managed to make the transition, and in that 2-year gap, we built up a team which we thought could be competitive in League Two.
Yep.
Or as best we could. We entered League Two in 2016. Managed, and we thought to ourselves, we probably need a 3 or 4 year stay in League Two to establish ourselves some more.
Yep.
In our second year, we got promotion.
That's pretty good.
It is pretty good, but believe it or not, sometimes when you're running a club, you want to do things when it's possible to do. And, but obviously you're not going to knock back the promotion.
That's it, because on the field, it's you guys are ready to go up, but behind the field, you're still that amateur club. You're trying to establish yourselves in that.
Everything takes dollars, so it requires a build-up of infrastructure. It requires a build-up of income for the club to be able to sustain whatever level you play at.
What changes instantly came to you guys once you got promoted from being a State League 2 team to State League 1? What needed to be changed in the backroom stuff in the club to cope with that?
Well, straight away you need an enclosed ground.
Yep.
We since '82 we've played at Collins Reserve, which was our home when we were in the amateur league, and it's still at one of our homes. And as soon as you need an enclosed ground, you need to look around where you're going to play at that League One level. Fortunately, even though I had approval by Charles Sturt Council to put a fence around the main ground at Collins Reserve, put it up at the beginning of the year, take it off at the end of the year, when we were able to move to West Beach, which is where we still are now, it was like heaven sent. You drive up there, it's a magnificent boulevard. The street itself is great, which takes you to West Beach.
It's come a long way, especially in the last few years as well.
No, look, honestly, I don't know where else you'd rather be. It's a magnificent setup there. So to answer your question, I guess the main things that happen when you go from League 2 to League 1 is if you want to put a team on the park that's going to have a chance of survival, you need to spend a few more dollars. Believe it or not, we had some good sponsors on board, some of which are still on board, which understood.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, some of our sponsors understood that we would require more support.
Yeah.
Going from League 2 to League 1, and I'm happy to say that some of them were able to provide that. And we managed to survive. That's the thing that was really, really difficult in the first couple of years. It's still difficult, to be honest, because it's such a tough and tight league. But it feels now that we're more at home at that level, at that standard.
Well, now you talk about sponsors. How hard is it in the Western suburbs? Because there's a lot of clubs in the Western suburbs already. You got White City, Beergrad, that known as now. Yeah. You got Western Strikers,
Vipers.
Yeah, Vipers. Yeah. To try and compete against them
and
for
Burke's
sponsors.
Really is not far from
everybody. There's a lot around this area.
Yeah, there is.
Even you look at LA Comets, who technically their base is on West Terrace, so that's near the west, close to you guys as well. Yeah. There's a lot in that area. How hard is it to compete against those clubs for sponsors?
Yeah, look, I don't think it's that difficult if you're trying to find sponsors that are a bit more upmarket sponsors, if I can put it that way. So it is more difficult if you're looking for sponsors, whether it's a pizza place, whether it's a cafe. I mean, obviously, every dollar that you can get as sponsorship is gratefully acknowledged because you need every cent you can get. But to actually get a bit more of the corporate dollar, if I can put it that way, well, then maybe there is a lot out there. You just got to find the key to get them to come on board.
Those sponsors, how keen are they to be a part of that club?
Well, it's funny how some things can happen. I mean, when we first entered the federation, and when we got the promotion out of League 2, through a connection that we had in our WNPL team, someone that was involved there, he was the state manager of a couple of branches of NAB.
Okay.
So he was good enough to introduce me to the state manager, and to cut a long story short, they became our major sponsor for the following 3 years. And even the federation was amazed that we had NAB across our shirts. Now, it wasn't even the fact of how much they gave us, because it wasn't an extraordinary number.
No.
But the fact that we had NAB across our shirts, believe it or not, that opened up some doors for me and the club to find other sponsorship. Because what happens with sponsorship is a little bit what happens with a soccer team. You know, if you've got good players, you're more likely to attract more good players. Because they want to play in a winning team. You know, sponsorship is not that much different. If you got an NAB splashed across the front of your shirts, you know, another potential sponsor will think to themselves, well, they've got to be a decent club. NAB wouldn't have put their name to a club that they felt wasn't worthy of their brand.
That's it. Because you might get the same money from like a local deli, like say Joe's Deli down the road or something.
Absolutely. Spot on.
But if someone sees Joe's Deli, they'll be like, oh, okay, they got Joe's Deli on. Which is great.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you're not grateful for Joe's Deli.
No, but it's just amazing.
From a marketing point of
view. That's it.
You know, that I honestly believe that us having NAB, which came through our WNPL, you know, so all your clubs, all your different sections of the club have got a role to play if you can extract some benefits from them. And this came from our women's team, which we stuck through thick and thin since the mid-90s. Now, people don't realise that. But since the mid-90s, when I was on the committee at the time, we decided to put women on. And we saw them through, and to this day, they get treated the same as our men. I mean, the needs can be slightly different at times, because obviously the two leagues aren't in the same category in all areas. But as far as the club's concerned, you know, if the men get to eat on a Thursday night after training, the women will get the same. Like, you know, we do treat them the same.
That's fantastic. And that leads me into exactly what I was going to go into next, was your WNPL. You're one of the few clubs in South Australia that have a men's team in the state leagues or NPL, and also a women's team in the WNPL or WSL. It's what's the challenges as a president to try and manage both of those, the State League 1 men's and also the WNPL?
Well, the challenge is that you got 2 senior sides, so
Yep.
you got to find, you got double of everything.
Yep.
And the challenge, quite frankly, can be the dollars, because I've always been of the opinion that if you can't look after them, don't have them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You either do it and you do it properly,
Yeah.
or you don't have them. But to do it properly, everything costs dollars. So I think what holds back a lot of clubs is that they understand what it takes to have a team in the WNPL and the dollars that are required for that as well, which, by the way, are going higher and higher every year because the league is growing, the status is growing. Just like you see in footy, AFL, with the women coming in, all of a sudden they're talking they've got to pay them a minimum amount. I'm not saying that that's happening without women at the moment, but believe it or not, there's some dollars flashed around even in WNPL now for players. So if you want to compete, what do? You can go in a corner and cry about that, or you've got to make it happen.
Yep.
And we've always taken the attitude that we'll always endeavour to make it happen. It's a competitive field. That's what sport is.
Yep.
And at the end, the competition is there for the strongest and to survive. And we hope that we remain reasonably strong enough to survive.
Well, it's getting stronger and stronger every year, as you did mention. You got players like Cotier, who plays for the Chile international team, playing for Salisbury Inter in the WNPL. So having players like that obviously lifts the status of the league in general, because you've got big players like that, players that have played in for the Matildas, current current A-League women players as well in that competition. So what's it like competing against those other teams to try and match them?
Look, as I said, the difficulty is that there's a variety of strengths out there in the WNPL. But if new clubs are going to come in, like for instance Comets have come in, Burks have come in, I welcome that. To me, you need strong clubs to commit to the game. Because we want to see that game grow. There's no point thinking, the women's game, it's never going to go anywhere. No, it might take a little bit longer, but I remember watching Fulham play in the late 90s. To be quite honest, the standard was nowhere near what the standard is today. And we certainly haven't set the house on fire in the last 3 or 4 years at Fulham, but the standard is chalk and cheese compared to what it was. So it is improving. World Cup coming next year.
Absolutely. That's lifted the buzz of it all as well.
Absolutely.
What do you make of clubs that set up women's teams but don't really focus as much on them, and they just pretty much have it there just to have a women's team? What's your focus? Thoughts on?
My thoughts on that have always been that if you're gonna have a team to wear your shirt, stands to reason that you got to honour that shirt and that team. If you're not prepared to do that, I don't understand why you would even try. Some of the difficulties that are there, though, are quite serious in the women's game, is that the player pool is very, very shallow. So the difference between the WNPL and the next tier down is really too much of a gap. So we're hoping that as the game grows, that pool can get a bit bigger. Because if you lose 2 or 3 players, you're almost up in arms that it's very, very hard to replace them.
And now with the more teams in the A-League women coming in, they're looking at having 12 teams by 2024, I think it is. How important is that to have more professional teams in Australia, which means more players, opportunities, more games, and we're going to be aligned with the rest of the big leagues around the world, women's leagues, for the amount of minutes being played. How important is that for the local leagues now as well? Because most of those players in the off-season might be coming back to the WNPL. So how important is those having that, those extra teams, extra players and all that?
Look, I think a larger league is always more exciting, like having 12 teams, for instance, in League 1 and 2, and the National Premier League is better than having 8 or whatever, 10. But there are a lot of things involved. Like every extra team that you have in the league, you've got to field that team. There are extra costs. Like you've got more games. Right. If you have 10, you're playing 18 games. If you have 12, you're going to play 22. So I guess these are all things that I think on the surface it's a good thing. I think the steps have to be taken when they are possible to be taken. just to give you an indication, there's been relegation in WNPL for quite some time. But at the end of every year, I've always pushed not to relegate unless there's something below that can come up that can be competitive.
Yep.
Because otherwise you're just diluting the quality.
Yep.
And it's not really achieving anything substantial. So, for instance, one year when the NTC team was bottom, all the presidents voted to keep them into WNPL because we wanted those young girls to come up to a WNPL standard so that we can all benefit from it. You know, so I've always taken the attitude that whatever is good for football is good for Fulham.
Yep. Because
you know,
it's almost like the early days of the men's competitions building up years and years ago. The women's ones is still fairly new to WNPL. So it needs that backing, like you said. And I mean, in theory, you'd like to think that you can match it up totally to the men, but sometimes you just can't. You know, so it's important that, and I think that the federation's been quite good with that. Like they've always. It took a bit of pushing sometimes, but they've always listened to the clubs. I mean, it's not much fun putting down a team from the WNPL that is a club that's been backing the women's game. It could be us, it could be whoever. Like if Adelaide City finds themselves at the bottom of the tree one year, or Metros, whoever, you know, you're going to put them down, and who's going to come up? You know, I know it's not ideal because in the men there's no issue. Doesn't matter who it is. Two go down, two go up. End of story. But the game's got to be at a more mature level. For that to happen. And the pool, like you said, it's not that big at the moment.
No,
so
it's just not.
And having that experience would obviously help the girls as well, being up there in the top league. What's the difference between you? Because you guys have been involved in women's football since the 90s. How has the...
And always with the WNPL.
How's that experience been like from back then to the way it is now? How would you compare the two about the women's game specifically?
Oh, look, there's no comparison, seriously. I mean, it's chalk and cheese. Our girls train 3 times a week, you know, and it's taken seriously, you know, like, so I really believe that give it another 5, 6 years, 7 years, the growth that the WNPL or the women's game can have far outstrips the men, really. Because just to catch up to the men in certain areas, there's a long way to go. You know?
When back in the 90s, what was that period like with women's football for the club? And what struggles did you guys experience?
We had no struggles in the early days because we were far better than all the others. No, because we took it more seriously. Probably that's the only reason. And so we won championships and so forth in those early years because the opposition, quite frankly, wasn't as good. And I think even though the opposition was initially Adelaide City had the women, then they parted. Metro Stars had the women, then they parted. But we kept the course. And we're delighted that we've done that. And I think we've reaped some rewards by doing that. And I think hopefully that will keep going.
So it's good. Hopefully you can have 2 very strong men and women's teams.
Well, we're waiting for the day that our men can get in the WNPL.
Or in the NPL,
the NPL. And then we've got both teams at the same level. That would be the ideal thing.
That would be fantastic to see that. How have you guys got something in set, like a date, rough mark to try and reach to, or not yet?
No, I'd hate to. It might put too much pressure on our coach. No, look, it's a difficult one because I think when that day comes, everything comes together. You know, you've got obviously would have to have a decent team, decent coach, good backup off the park. And also, maybe a little bit of luck as well because with the final series, the way it is, I mean, you make the 6. Anything can happen. It's not like having to finish top 2, but the top 1 obviously goes through automatically.
For me personally, the final series, I love final series, but when it comes to the promotion relegation, we don't see that in the A-League, so it doesn't matter as much.
No.
But when we do see it here in State League 1 and also the State League 2, first gets automatic promotion.
Yes.
I think, I don't know, I want to get your thoughts on this, that in the final series, the grand final should already have number 1 straight to the grand final, and the other second, the second to maybe 5th, or even include a 6th in there as well. All fight it out, and get the final promotion spot, and then the winner of that plays off in the grand final against the first place.
Yeah, look, that doesn't sound a bad system. Look, I mean, around the world, our system doesn't exist.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It doesn't exist. But having said that, it does create a bit of a. I mean, just to give you an idea, talking Fulham.
Yep.
You know, we've never made the top 6 since we've been in League One. Okay, we finished 7th last year. Okay, so you start off the next season, and unless you've got stars in your eyes and you think you're going to go from League One to bloody A-League or something in 1 year, you tend to pace yourself best you can. You say, okay, if we make the top 6 this year, we've taken another step, because a lot of other steps are taken to get the team into the top 6.
Yeah.
I mean, just to give you an idea, I mean, some of the things that maybe no one talks about. At the beginning of last season, we bought one of those cameras so we could tape all of our games.
VO cameras or VO,
VO cameras. So we bought one of those so we could tape all our games. We got GPSs for all our players, including our women.
Yep.
Now, this might sound like old news to a club that's in the A-League or whatever, but for our club, it's a first time.
Yeah.
But I've always been a believer that you put all these things in place, and then, quite frankly, you demand a better performance.
Yeah.
Right? Not much point in me putting a GPS on your back and then not reading the results.
No.
And not utilising the results. So technology is fantastic, but you also need the right people to follow that technology and utilise that technology to improve the squad and the team's performance. So we've put a lot of these things in place that we didn't have in the past.
Yep.
And I dare say probably not all League One clubs have got in place.
Yep. So you guys still track all your players every game?
Absolutely.
Yep. And so that goes, the coaches obviously looked at and utilise that every game?
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes they might think that a player's overloaded, they cut back on his session. So there's a lot that can be done.
Yep.
But the old dollar always rules to some degree. But you also got to have an attitude of improving.
Yeah.
And what aren't we doing that we should, like, if I went to an Adelaide United training, I'm sure I'd see something that we've never done at Fulham.
Yeah.
Now, if it doesn't cost too much, or if it's a free thing, why not put it in the system?
Yeah.
So this is the attitude that I try to have. But you need the right people. As I said, there's no point having a coach that doesn't believe in GPSs. You're wasting your money.
Yeah.
So that's for the whole thing to come together and improve your performances. It requires different areas to come together.
Well, hopefully, when we're talking about the final system, because I think my thing is the thoughts I had with that format was more so to still have that final system where you have the grand final, but also taking out the first team so it doesn't affect the rest of it. The rest of them, because sometimes that team will demolish everyone else, get their way into the grand final anyway.
That's true.
And sometimes the second team has to play off against that team twice, and by the time they play their third game to get into the grand final, they're
a bit knackered.
They're knackered.
I mean, virtually that's what happened to us when we got promotion. We finished, I think it was third that year.
Yeah.
So, but when we had to go up to Port Pirie to play, and we knew that if we beat Port Pirie, we'd be in the final at Hindmarsh. And there was all celebration after that game because we knew we would get promotion because the team we were playing in the final had finished top of the league. So they get automatic promotion. So even though we lost that final 2-1, I think, from memory, it was almost a dead rubber for us because, I mean, every club dreams of being promoted. And once we knew we were promoted, it took a little bit of shine. Didn't take any shine. It was still exciting to go.
I know exactly what you mean, though.
But, it would have been a hell of a lot different if we had to go to Hindmarsh and win that game.
Yep.
Okay. So, it's never 100%, I think. When you've got finals, there's always... I mean, 1 year, going back, maybe 3 years ago now, Cumberland got promoted out of League One.
Yep.
They struggled to make the 6. It's one of those years we beat them twice.
Yep.
They make the 6 and got promotion because they had a good run home. That's the other thing, you can hit form at the right time, win a couple of games. Is it fair? No, probably not.
No.
Probably you can't beat top 2 go because they've played 22 games, and if they're top 2 teams, really that's probably the system you see around the world is like it is because they haven't found a better one.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's the finals is always great, and
we used to here
love
in Australia too.
Yeah.
We have a mentality of playing finals.
Yeah.
And as I said, we've set our sights hopefully this year to make finals.
Yep.
We're sixth, by the way, at the moment, but it's very tight.
Yeah,
very
and
tight.
The struggles, we've spoken about all the struggles, but before I let you go, what is your favourite memory of Fulham United during your time there? Because 52 years the club's been around.
Yeah.
A long period. You've been there for majority of that time as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's some of your favourite moment at the club?
Yeah, look, it's a hard one for me because, as I said, because I captained them for a long time. Obviously, we won some good games, and but I guess from a pure 52-year point of view for the club, I think when I suggested that we go into the federation, okay, and I suggested that we needed to do that because of the juniors, and it was accepted by the club. I think. It didn't seem exciting at the time because we didn't even know if we were going to succeed in going into the federation. But when that happened, okay, and we didn't find League Two too difficult, to be honest. I think we could match it quite comfortably. But when we got promotion and then at the same time, virtually, we found that eventually we'd be calling West Beach Parks our home.
Yep.
I think that the two together, for me, is my really highlight.
Yep.
Purely because looking ahead 50 years,
which
unfortunately I won't see, but looking ahead 50 years, I think it'll set a base for the club that with reasonably good administration can become a powerhouse in the WNPL. And that's my genuine belief. Now, a lot of things can go wrong at clubs, we all know that, but being a 52-year-old club, and always having had people that have stayed around the club for a long time in administering it. I'm not the first one that's been there for 9 years as president. It does mean that having the infrastructure in place that we have with Collins Reserve in the federation now, with West Beach Parks that we're hoping to take over next year, and it's always been earmarked to be ours. Right, that hasn't changed. Just a matter of when it can happen. That's the highlight for me because I just can see how much that can mean to the club going forward.
Because so much you can strive for. Now you can get the NPL for the men. The women are in the WNPL.
And look, in 30 years' time, they might be in the NPL and come down like a Blue Eagles have. But that's football, you know what I mean?
And we don't even know.
The structure doesn't change.
And we don't even know what's happening with the national second division as well because
you never know.
You never know. You guys could be playing in the A-League.
You never know. Look.
We don't know how structure's going.
I always joke. I've got some very good mates at the club, obviously. And there's a couple of people there that virtually have a very similar background with Fulham as I have. We played together as 20-year-olds, for 10 years. And I always joke with them that, I've done my bit from the amateurs into the Federation, League 2 into League 1. I said, whoever takes over just got to get to the A-League. It's only 2 steps.
It's only 2. Yeah, that's right. We'll soon be 3.
And we always have a joke about that, But hey, the sky's the limit. I mean, every club starts somehow, I mean, that doesn't mean to say that I'm a dreamer that I think it's going to happen in the next 2 years. We could be in League 1 for the next 5 years for all I know. But one thing I do know is that we do survive in the next 5 years. We will be a stronger club than hopefully we are today.
Well, absolutely. And before, one more last thing as well. Sure. With West Beach, once that does get signed over, you guys take over, what's the foresight of what you guys will change to? Because we've seen a little bit of change at Olympic. We know they're going to do more there to make it their home. What's your first thoughts
at the moment,
to make that home?
It's a little bit sterile. When you go to the place, obviously, it's not just ourselves that play there. And that won't change really because the overheads of the place are such that you do need to utilise the venue. But, obviously, we'd be very, very keen to find a naming rights to the venue. And, of course, as soon as you do that, we've seen what they've done with Apex there. Obviously, we'd go down the same line to make sure people understand, what the ground is called. I'd be keen to put something in the club rooms to identify the place as a Fulham United home.
Black and white stripes everywhere.
Whatever. But obviously, they're not big things. But they are things that,
Yeah, and it also changes the feel when people walk to the club. They'll be like, "Oh, this is a little bit intimidating for the opposition, and also exciting for the home team as well."
Absolutely, we might, as you say, change the colours inside the change. There's not 4 nice change rooms there. Maybe one can become more. Well, it is already. We always use the front one on the left as you enter, but we could dress that up to make it look like a Fulham home. All those little things. I think I know at Collins Reserve at one stage we had black and white stripes tiles in the showers.
I think it's a great feel to it because you go to Beergrad's home ground and Frank Mitchell Park, and they've got the Serbian colours painted on the front of their entrance. You also got Sturt have their logo painted in the club rooms. Then you've also and they're still working on that, but then. You got CFC at Croydon's new home, which I haven't moved into yet, but
that's going to be
that's got a real intimidating thing. You walk there, and it's red seats with white writing. It's pretty cool. So I think saying as little as black and white would just change the mentality as well for the boys.
Look, it's something that we're hoping that we're keen to do once we're in there and take control.
Well, exciting times coming up for the Fulham United. And
let's hope so.
Yeah. Well, you said 8 years is normally your theme. So you've done 8 years. Or you're in your 9th year as president now?
This is my 9th year.
Yep. So does that mean...
I've overstepped the mark.
Yeah, I know you have. But does that mean you're stepping into the second 8 year?
Oh, no.
So you got 7 more years to go?
I can definitely say no to that. But certainly, look, it will be what it will be. As I said, I've got some good people on the committee. So the transition... hopefully won't be a problem.
Yeah. Well, this could be the final part of your presidential.
Look, I think presidents are no different to coaches in a way. I think you can become a little bit stale, and a little bit of new energy is always welcome. It's like introducing a couple of new players into a team; it gives it a buzz. And and I think we've got some competent people to do just that.
You've definitely done some good things with the club since you've been in the last 9 years. WNPL is doing amazing. The State League 1 boys now they're in the federation and doing very well. So and now you almost got a new home potentially.
Well, it's definitely ours. It's a question of the change over time.
It's all happening at the club, and it's a great big club. 450 registered players. So
they keep coming back. We must be doing a few things right.
Well, absolutely. And I've had a few cousins that have played for your club as well. So
fantastic.
So it's always the links there to all those clubs. But mate, thanks on joining me today for this chat. But before I let you go, one last thing I do with every guest I have on the show: 2 kicking it questions to have a theme with my podcast.
Yes.
So the first one: who would you love to kick it with on the field? Anyone in the world? Who would you love
to have a kick with?
Have a kick with anyone in the world, dead or alive?
Maradona, I think.
Maradona, nice. Any reason behind Maradona?
Only because I remember seeing a clip of him just playing with the ball. When he was in Naples. Playing for Naples, and to this day, I saw him do some things with the ball that if I had to explain to someone what he, like you can say to someone he's juggling the ball, for instance, or whatever. But I saw him do some tricks and things with that bloody ball that I'm thinking, I can't even explain it to someone what this guy can do with that ball. I wouldn't be playing with him. I just want to see him just want to see him sort of what he can do with that ball.
He would be a good one. And it's interesting to know that for you, that my last guest, Daniel Blanco, the coach of Western Strikers, he actually trained with the Maradona. So
is that right?
Yeah. So he said to me, he's gave me his guest, and I said, why that one? And he was like, oh no, because I've already kicked Maradona. He would be my number one. I'm like, I'm like, all right, there you go. So make sure you listen to that. If you haven't listened to that episode, make sure you go back and listen to Daniel Blanco, because
it's amazing.
He's had all that experience. But there you go. So you want to kick with Maradona? He's already done it.
Yeah, fantastic.
But who would you? Now the second one is who would you love to kick it with? So relax with on a Saturday night, someone local and someone international, and watch some football. Anyone in the world. And someone local. Someone local and someone international. So two people.
Look, I wouldn't mind sitting back and having a drink with Milan Ivanovic and watching the game. Only because to this day I rate him as the best defender this country's ever had. And I believe it or not, Milan played 1 year for Fulham. I mean, a lot of people don't realise that. But when we were in the amateur league, when he first gave away playing for Adelaide City, because he knew some of us at Fulham, he actually played for 1 year. And we got promotion that year in the amateur league.
There you go.
So,
how old was he back then when he played for you guys?
Well, it was the following year after he left Adelaide City. So he was still
in his early 30s, mid 30s.
And to this day, obviously, because he was there for a season, and I was on the committee at the time.
Yeah.
This is before I went to, this is soon after I came back. And, he's one that I've always really respected.
Yeah.
I don't know, he's always made a big impression on me, the way he played. I remember going to Hindmarsh Stadium and watching him play, Alex Tobin in front of him, Vidmar on his left and whatever else. I mean, it was the Australian defence, really, to be honest, that City had in those days.
Yep.
And, so I wouldn't mind sort of sitting back and having a drink and watching a game with him.
Nice. Have you got a photo of him playing for Fulham?
Yeah, we'd have something.
You got to put it on the new West Beach club rooms.
No, we always have a bit of a running joke, the two of us, because I played a lot of my football at Fulham as a sweeper in those days. The teams that played with a sweeper, right? So I played midfield and then finished off the season as a sweeper. And I always joke around with him and say, look, Milan, I said, I'm not very happy with you because until you came to the club, I was the best sweeper this club ever had. And then you had to come and spoil it for one season. So we have a bit of a laugh about that. But he's a great guy to get together with too.
Would you put him as your local or your international as your two? Because you got two people you can choose to have a drink with. Put him as your local or as your...
Yeah, and as my local.
Yeah, and who would you go for international? Anyone in the world?
International.
Maradona?
No, look, probably Maradona if I had to have just my favourite.
Or who else?
Sure. Probably Rossi. Do you remember Rossi that played in the Italian World Cup in Spain when we won the?
It's back in the 80s.
Back in the 80s.
Yeah, I briefly remember him. My grandfather has the poster.
Look, he never really did a hell of a lot after that World Cup, but during that World Cup, he was absolutely on fire. Some of the goals he scored, particularly against Brazil in one of the games in the finals, were just, I don't know, for whatever reason, I suppose maybe because he won the World Cup, it doesn't hurt him. But he was a bit of a controversial figure as well. And he sort of went from relatively unknown to bang, he plays in the World Cup and scores goals and wins the World Cup. He'd been interesting to talk to. I guess that's probably the main.
Well, there you go, Milan Ivanovic and Rossi, and Maradona maybe as well. Paolo Rossi, So there you go. There's I love these. I love the kicking at questions because you get so much out of the guests that you don't normally get through.
But it's funny because until you ask the question, you don't really give it a lot of thought. But when you sort of have to come up with a name. It's funny how even Paolo Rossi probably wouldn't have been, even in my mind, if I hadn't been asked the question. But just that intrigue of what happened to him in that short period of time.
There you go. Well, thank you so much. It's been intriguing to talk to you.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
You've been in the game for so long, and to get that experience from you about what it's been like at Fulham United, also your time at Adelaide City.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure to hear.
Thank you very much, John.
That was the president of Fulham United in the State League 1 and WNPL, Arthur Labrosciano. Make sure you subscribe to Kicking It Local wherever you get your podcasts so you can get a taste of the SA football community. Plus, follow Kicking It Local SA on Instagram and Twitter so you don't miss any of the action. See you soon!